Yo, what are you doing? This is way too much for a wedding.
I know it sounds crazy. Why can't I get a Netflix deal?
I'm done buying gear.
But not every videographer needs a production company. I lost 9 terabytes in 2020 of footage. Client comes in and says, hey, our budget's only $2,500. This is going on record for the first time ever.
Let's go ahead and bring up my good friend, amazing filmmaker, fantastic wedding filmmaker, and overall just a cool dude, Mr. Justin Porter. Let's bring him up. What it do, bro?
Oh, what's up, man? Dude, I'm honestly, every time I get to do one of these lives with you, I feel like I say thank you a million times just because it's dope. I feel like I was in the chat like yesterday, you know, in any of your videos, your comments and stuff. And for us to just have this relationship where, you know, we could just be boys, we could talk cameras, we could talk about life, and then be invited on your platform. Every time, bro, thank you. So I'm excited to be here.
Oh, well, thank you, dude, for being here. And, you know, I felt kind of bad because the last time you were on the show, we had planned on you being on the show. We had everything kind of set up. We were going to talk about business. And then Red went and did what Red did. You know, they dropped that new KX or the Raptor X, on us, and just completely just took over our entire mindset. But that was probably one of my favorite shows we've ever done because we also had, you know, Jared, CEO of Red, on the show. And I think we just had a great time.
Yeah, no, that was a good time, man. I think, honestly, we adapted well. And I can't speak for you. I know for a fact I'm a big Red fanatic, if it's not obvious with anybody. But yeah, I was all about it. When you were like, yeah, man, we might refocus and talk about this new camera. I'm like, yes, say no more.
Well, awesome, dude. Yeah, dude. I was like, yeah, I think that's probably was the best call for that day, and it obviously worked out. Mr. Porter, I'm really excited to kind of dive into your business a lot because I personally think that you do something that is very unique. First of all, in the chat, let us know if you guys have been keeping up with Justin's content, because if you have, I'm going to kind of try to dissect some of his content today, and hopefully we can take a lot out of it. Yeah. But before we get into it, I just want to know from you, when you look at your business today, what are you the most excited about or proud of? And then what are some of the things that you currently look at your stuff and you say, I wish I could make that better?
Ooh, man, that's a good question. We didn't talk about this in the prep. No, man, I think when I look at my content now, you know, it's funny. I'm gonna say all this because I feel like my wife is watching, because it was her, and it is her. For those of you that don't know, my wife is the reason all of these like POVs of this and that. It's literally her eyes recording me in real time. So a lot of our content, actually all of it, is 100% organic. Like I am trying something or reacting to something and she just records it. But when I look at it now, the thing that makes me the most excited is how excited I am. Like it sounds weird, but I look at it and I see the comments from people and they're like, man, you're so passionate and this energy and that energy. And then I'll watch the video like it's not me and react the same way. Like, oh, like I would laugh. And, you know, so I find that it's cool to be able to put out educational content or funny content. But it also is like entertaining, you know, it's showing like the heart and the passion, because that, to me, to answer the last question you said, is what would I want to improve? I am always trying to improve my films. I think our content is only the way it is because of that desire to achieve that higher look. And the stuff that I'm comparing my work to is what's on Netflix. You know, why can't I get a Netflix deal? I know it sounds crazy, but why can't a wedding filmmaker get a Netflix? Why is there no wedding films on Netflix, you know, or Hulu, you know? And so in my mind, it's like, well, my films don't look like Netflix. They don't look like Hulu. How do we get it there? You know, obviously these are real couples, but they even have, you know, those reality shows, and they have all this stuff that is made to be, you know, organic and stuff like that. And it's still more polished. What tools are they using? What resources are they using? Am I able to use some of that? Can I, you know, make it more accessible in my market? And I think that's what I look at now. It's like, if I could improve anything, it's always the work. It's always like, you guys look at my films and like, this looks like Netflix. And I'm like, that color grade is just not there though. Like I can see it, even though it may look good on the outside. I look at it and I'm like, you can tell that this was run and gun. You could tell that, you know, it's too much overexposure. Like I don't see that in Netflix reality shows. I don't see crazy blown out skies the way that I see it sometimes in my footage. The shot balance isn't the same, you know, and so that to me is what I'm actively trying to push and get better, is all the little pieces.
You know, I think that's really interesting that you say that, because I look at your work and like most of the stuff that you're even picking out, I don't see. I just see an amazing story being told. And for me, I know that, like, you know, for filmmakers even too, it's very easy for us to get caught up in, you know, the resolution, the dynamic range, the frame rates, and all these things. But when there's a captivating story, you kind of forget some of those things and you just get drawn in. And that's one thing I will say about your films that did draw me in, was that like I would find myself watching them, and like I publicly have said this, I'm not a huge fan of shooting weddings myself. And quite honestly, I don't even really enjoy going to weddings 9 times out of 10. But yet there was something about your films that would still draw me in. And I think it's really interesting that even somebody who is at your caliber of skill is still looking to make those improvements as you go, which I think is a huge nugget that anyone can take away, is that no matter where you are in your journey, you almost should never feel like you've arrived, right? Like there's always this feeling of, I can probably learn a little bit more. I can improve this. I can make these changes. But with that said, I would love to know for you, because you have a kind of you have a unique social media plan. And I know your wife does a lot of it with you or for you, but you know, you have a way of posting content that filmmakers enjoy, but still somehow also attract your target client, which is actually not filmmakers. And it's really unique that you do that, because I look at a lot of filmmaker social media accounts. I even audit my own account, and you look at them and you're like, are you making content for other filmmakers so that you can look cool to other filmmakers? Or are you actually making content to attract the clients that you're trying to attract? And you are one of the few people who I see who have figured out that healthy balance of both. Because I look in your comment section and you got
it's
in there.
Both.
You got filmmakers in there that's like, yo, what are you doing? This is way too much for a wedding. You don't need an easy rig, blah, 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 blah. But then you also have like brides and grooms or you know, fiancés who are like, oh my gosh, I want this guy to shoot my wedding. Or, oh, if my wedding doesn't look like this, I don't want it. And how do you keep that balance between posting stuff for the filmmakers, but that still attract your actual target client?
Man, that's a good question too. I think I have to go back and give credit to our copywriter, Big Mouth Copy. Just a little plug real quick. But I have to, because so I hired her. It was the first time I ever got a copywriter. And I told her, I was like, look, she asked me why do I do the things that I do? Like, why is it important for me? She was like, why do you know, go all this extra steps to mic people and, you know, eat, like just the whole process. And I was like, well, you know, I care about the films and yada, yada, yada. And she said, well, we need to tell that to your couples. And I was like, yeah, but just don't offend the videographers or the filmmakers. And this is what she said to me. And this is why I think our content shifted from that moment. She said, your client is not filmmakers, it's couples. Talk to your couples, not to your filmmakers. And I was like, oh, okay. And so she did our copy, and that's exactly what it was. It wasn't like we were trying to, you know, discredit filmmakers, but we had to say the things that we knew our couples felt, our ideal couple. Like, we don't care about shots of your eyelashes getting glued on. And then our couples in our consultation calls would be like, yeah, I read your website. And we were like, oh my God, I can't believe that. We don't want that. It was like, it was a weird shift, right? Yeah. And now in our content, it's very similar. We will, if I make a video about the Rode Wireless Pro and it's all specs, that's to filmmakers. But if I talk about how this audio is going to make your wedding film sound 10 times better while also throwing in a few specs that go over people's head, what we notice is our couples will be like, I don't know anything you said, but I want that mic when we get married. Like, you know what I mean? It'll be, and then the filmmakers will get their satisfaction because they're like, bro, I didn't even know that mic did 32-bit float. And so It's just kind of like a weird dynamic, but we kind of balance it now. We're like now we do it without even trying, right? It's entertaining. I'm spitting out facts that I know about a product, talking about why I love it. And then our couples also, we've seen this a lot, but our couples love to see kind of behind the curtain. Like they see fully behind the curtain. Like I bought this new lens because it's going to let me do this. I bought this suction cup to mount it on a window so I can get these types of shots at weddings. And then that makes the couples go, he's this invested in filming weddings. We want that, and then the filmmakers would be like, I didn't know we could do this. Like, so it's like on both sides. It's kind of like catering to both markets, but the couples see joy out of it and the filmmakers.
You know what I think is an interesting take from what you just said is that through all of it, you're telling stories, which, we've all heard that saying that, stories, story is king, or that story is all that matters. And like, it almost has become like a cliche thing to say as a filmmaker, but
like cinematic.
Right. Like cinematic. Exactly. God, I hate that word, but I love it, but I hate it. But like, what I think is really interesting, because I've dissected your content quite a bit, like probably more so than I'd like to admit. But what I didn't take away until you just said it was that even when you are talking about gear, you're not just talking about gear for the sake of gear. You're talking about gear, about how it pertains to your ability to tell a better story. And I think that is probably the thing that, and obviously, like we can tell when we look at your metrics, you're following on TikTok, you're following on Instagram, what you're doing on YouTube, and then with the JPM Academy, like we can tell that like there is a difference. And it's so clear to me now that like, even when you talk about gear, it's not for the sake of, oh, look how cool this gear is. It's, oh, this is going to allow me to tell a better story, or by having this piece of gear, it changed this. And even through that statement, you're now telling a story, which I find super interesting. But I have to imagine that this idea of shooting weddings and getting the best quality and, trying to not miss a moment, like it can't just be about getting pretty shots. It can't just be about getting a great wedding. And I've heard you say this before, that like for you, it's like imagining this could be the last time that a bride and her dad get a chance to see each other, and this is the most important moment. That like there's something there, I think, for you, where it's like telling these stories is bigger than just a story, because it has more of a personal impact on the people the stories are being told on. Am I right?
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that's where the overconsumption, like the true passion comes out from that. It's because I'm realizing, through personal experiences, or even just, some of my couples have very, heartwarming testimonies that they'll share with me in our consultations. And I'm like, man, like, how do we make it? Like, I don't want to say it, but what if, right? Most people only hire a filmmaker once, and that's usually for their wedding. And then they'll hire a photographer for their graduation pictures and, baby pictures. They'll do that. But if this is the only time I know you'll hire a video person, then this may also be the only time that you have the opportunity of getting video of your dad on camera saying, I love you. So knowing that and kind of taking that mindset to the weddings is why I don't see it a problem to go out of my way to mic 15 people, or to get an interview, or to, if I know I can't be in this room right now, cool, I'll just put this camera on a window and just point it wide. And I also understand that imperfections is still better than nothing. So even though this camera is, mounted way high and is wide, and I got to punch in and you can kind of see a little noise, or my Easy Rig got some camera shake to it, it's better to have that memory in that moment than to not have captured it at all. And my couples, they don't even, like, I've never gotten, oh, hey, Justin, we hate all this camera shake or this camera movement. We don't like, I've never gotten that. And I've never gotten, it just makes it, you start to think about it in a different light, where you're like, okay, this moment, this memory is more important than the quality. And I feel like that's a double-edged sword, because I say that, and then every time I'm like, oh, I just got this new lens, this new camera. Oh my God, I got a red. And but that goes back to my own personal, right? Like, I've gotten here, right? And I feel like I've hit this level where I understand what it takes to go out and shoot a wedding in a reality TV style. Now I'm like, I figured it out. All the gear stuff before was how do I use a gimbal for reality? How do I, hold my camera longer for reality? I got that.
Yeah.
Now the goal is how do I polish it to look like Netflix's reality? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like now this is just personal because I could easily just stop buying stuff and just go with the flow right now, and all my couples would be content. Everything I'm doing now is just how do I make it look just as good as what we see on the big, the big platforms.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And like, I can tell that. Like, I mean, obviously, I love your, yeah, I think it's on Instagram. You have a community and it's like, I'm done buying gear, but you literally every other post is you buying some other people gear, which is just hilarious from a filmmaker standpoint. But I know that like you have this nonstop pursuit to just keep leveling up, which I think every filmmaker needs. And Justin, I kind of want to like peel back a few layers. And I want to ask you, it's your first time shooting a wedding. Let's go back to the first wedding you've ever shot, or one of the first weddings you ever shot. What was it about that day, about that interaction, about, shooting a wedding for the first time? I don't know what camera you probably had back then, but what was it about that made you say, oh yeah, I kind of like where I'm at?
Well, in the beginning, I think so. I filmed my first wedding was an elopement for my wife's best friend, right?
Okay.
And so that one, I felt like, how you make something or you do something, like you have kids, right?
Yep.
That feeling you get when you do something for your kid and you just see the joy, right? You see the gratitude that they have, like, oh, daddy, thank you. Like they're so excited.
Yeah.
It's weird, right? But like I filmed that elopement and I felt that. Like in the moment filming it, I felt that joy. I felt that, wow, this is like, look what I am giving them after this happened. Like their parents weren't there, but I got to record it so that they could see it, right?
Yeah.
And then when I filmed my second wedding, that was an actual wedding. I felt immediate joy. It was just like, man, this is fun. Like the process of doing it, I never was on that side of like, it's too long, the day is too hard. Like I always found joy in it because I enjoyed, just the interactions and the people and stuff like that. And so it just continued to progress until I think you said this earlier, right? If you never want to level up, then, you should always want that as a filmmaker.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, being complacent is, for lack of a better word, is boring.
Yeah.
Like I have my imagination is constantly all over the place. And so for me, it's like, even if it is perfect, even if I get my films to Netflix standard, the next goal is, well, why is it not on Netflix? It's not, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, what can we keep doing? And so back in the beginning, that was kind of, that idea was out of it. It was just, I wanted to create, and I love that satisfaction of being able to give this back. Reviews was like my favorite thing. Couples will just, oh my God, Justin, this is amazing. Like people post it. I'll see wedding filmmakers post it. To me though, when I get that, it's like, this is the best. That is better than the payment. That's better than recognition from other filmmakers. Like hearing that and knowing, and then when they pinpoint it now and they're like, oh my God, what you got in the bridal suite with my dad, or I didn't even know you knew who my grandma was, and you got that soundbite or this or that. When they pinpoint the little things that I know I went out of my way to make sure we got, it's like, gotta keep going, gotta keep going.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's huge that you found something that brought you that type of joy, and that you were able to like, cause like all those other things, as you mentioned, like, the day is too long or it's too difficult or whatever. I think those are normal sticking points for a lot of filmmakers, but you found something that brought you passion beyond that. But obviously shooting your first elopement and then doing your next wedding, like those are fun. But like at a certain point, I'm sure you realize, oh crap, I got to turn this into a business. Right. And so there's probably a switch from, oh, I'm enjoying this to like, oh, okay, no, this is now needs to be somewhat of a business that I need to be able to, live off of and take care of my family. So for you, when you went from it just being a passion to it also being a business, Was that difficult for you to do? Was there like a switch that you had to make, or was it challenging for you to say like, oh, I just want to shoot weddings. I don't want to think about the business side of this. Like, was it
Yeah.
difficult for you to say like, okay, I now have to think about this a little bit more like an actual business?
So this is going on record for the first time ever, because I don't talk about business online, mostly because our industry, it promotes, profit over passion, right?
Mm.
It promotes making money, scale your wedding business to 10x. It promotes that versus what I promote is, do you love it? And if you do, the money will come, but make sure you love it. You love the process. So, but going on the record, right? I have always been an entrepreneur. That's the thing about me that I love. I love business. And my wife is the reason for the slower schedule this year, because she's like, babe, you can't be doing this. You got to be at the kids' football games. Because me, I'm like, well, business doesn't have limits, right? Business doesn't have quotas, or it has quotas, but it doesn't have like restrictions. Like Amazon's never going to go, we're only going to do a billion in revenue this year and call it quits. We're not going to sell anything else. Like that, they have the goal of 1 billion, but they're shooting for 3, 4, 5, 6 billion, right? And so for me, even in the beginning, having a business was always like, this was always the goal, was like, I know I want to run my own production company. And when I would do consultation calls with people about the money side of things, I would often tell them, are you working like a freelancer, or are you trying to operate as a business? Because there's a mental shift you got to change. Freelancers have a day rate and they don't budge. Freelancers have, you know what I mean? I only work on these days. I only work on these hours. Freelancers, I don't do emails at home, right? Businesses don't have that. Businesses run 24/7. We're just not large enough to be like Amazon, where like Jeff Bezos isn't answering your customer service call. He's got people that's doing it. But until you get there, you are wearing all the hats. And so even in the beginning, for me, it was always a business. It was always, I know I need to operate and move in a way that, that runs and functions very similar to how a business does. You should have a monthly goal as a business to make a certain amount of money, not itemize that based on the client. Because I've done weddings, and I shared this in one of our mentor calls. But I was like, man, there was a month where I knew like we know our overhead is at X amount. Like, let's say your overhead is 10,000 a month. Your goal every month is at minimum is 10,000. So you should never come in less than 10,000. But if a client comes in and says, hey, our budget's only 2,500, and you're 2,500 away from your $10,000 goal, but your freelancer mindset is going to tell you, no, my starting rate's $3,000 or 35, you're going to say no. But the business side is going to say, hit quota and then see what we can do past that. So it's, for me, it's always been that. It's always been, before my wife and I started doing this together, she had, or before we were even husband and wife, we were just like boyfriend, girlfriend. So, you split everything in the middle. Before we were like, okay, you're going to be my wife, so we got this. But before that, it was she had her half, I had my half. So I knew like, okay, I got to make this amount running for myself just to cover my half of the bills and the expectations of our family. And now the table's turned a little bit where we see the business together, and it's like, okay, we got to make X amount to make sure we cover everything, and then push past that. Anything past that is just kind of like icing on the cake. That's your profit.
Yeah. Well, shout out to your wife real quick, because she kills it, bro. Like, I look up to her, like when it comes to social media and everything that she's doing. And y'all definitely have a fantastic dynamic. And obviously what y'all are doing is working. And I hope everybody got those little nuggets. I know he was dropping little gems, and we'll definitely cut this up and put it out there for you guys. But he absolutely just nailed it. There is a different mindset between being a freelancer and being a business, and kind of shifting your mindset to that is super important. All right, I think we got a question. Let's go ahead and pull it up. Jarrell, what's our question?
Yeah, so we got a question come in. It basically says, do you charge more, Justin, for your wedding videos as you upgrade your equipment?
Ooh, that's a good one.
So here's my thing, right? Your couples don't care what you shoot with. Like even corp, I feel like only big budget corporate people care about what you shoot with. Like if you're shooting a commercial for the Super Bowl, they're worried about what gear you're using because maybe they have broadcast restrictions or whatever. But in my eyes, as an artist, it's I always use this carpenter analogy because I used to be a carpenter like a long time ago. I still love to do it, but a carpenter is not going to charge you to build. If they build your house, they're not going to charge you based on whether they're going to use a nail gun or a hammer, right? They're going to use the most efficient tool to get the best result and complete the project, whether that means using a nail gun or using a hammer. But on the flip side, if you hire that same contractor to build a birdhouse, the same mindset applies. They're not going to charge you if they're going to use a nail gun, stick glue, a staple gun, whatever. They're just going to get the job done. And so for me, I've never charged, even though I have the Raptor and the KX and we shoot on RAW, like I'm not charging because of that. I'm not charging because I upgraded my equipment. I'm not charging because I'm using my drone or I'm using my gimbal. I'm charging to create the best possible art, which is the film that they get. That's what I'm charging for. Everything else, like, yeah, the prices go up a little bit as demand rises and stuff like that. But everything else is like, I'm focused on perfection from a filmmaker standpoint, from my own personal, what I believe I want to hit, what tiers I want to hit. Like audio was one thing. So I was like, you know what? Let's focus on audio. And I went down that rabbit hole and I was like, until I was confident that my audio met the standard, then I moved on to something else. But I'm not going to charge my couple because I'm using Sync and Cost 11Ds. You know what I mean? Like for the most part, they won't know the difference if I use a Sync or if I use a Rode mic. But to me, I want a certain look, quality, sound. That's what I want. That's not what they necessarily care about. So the price shouldn't be reflected based on whether or not you upgrade equipment or because you own a A1 or FX6. Like that doesn't deter. If you say that in the sales call, they'll probably look at you like, I don't care. like you would lose that couple if you said, yeah, so we shoot all weddings on Raptors, Komodo X's. We film in RAW, so it's R3D format. It's 16-bit RAW.
They go.
Who cares, man? Like, are you going to give us a good film or not? Like,
so I got it. That's the perfect answer. I just want to add something because I do something very similar. Like you said, you used the carpenter thing. For me, I go a lawn care service because I don't know crap about lawn care services, but I paid a lot of money for lawn care services. And like, I don't care what lawnmower he's using. I don't care if he's pushing it. I don't care if he's riding on it. If he's pushing it, I'm like, man, he's working hard. He probably should get one where he can ride on it. But then if he has one that he's riding on, I'm like, all right, cool. He gets the job done in like half the time, but I don't care. I'm paying the same price. You know what I mean? And so I think, it's super important that like when we get into filmmaking, we can get overly obsessed with like, oh, if I get a better camera, I can charge more money or this, that, and the other. I think those are two different like avenues. Like if you have a better camera, yeah, if you're like charging rental packages for your camera, then yeah, you might be able to get a little bit more money for your camera because of a rental package. But aside from that, like if you're providing a service, which the service is to make a video for the person, charging more because of better equipment doesn't really make a lot of sense. But I will say, and I'm sure Justin, indirectly, this has benefited you, is that if you do choose to upgrade your gear and that allows you to create a better product, you can get more business, but not because you necessarily have better gear. It's just because you have created a better product. But the truth is that 9 times out of 10 for most creators, better gear isn't always what's necessary to create a better product. A lot of times it's just better knowledge. You know how to work your camera better, you know how to look for the right angles, and you learn how to tell a better story. That can actually help you create a better product. And that's going to help you get more jobs. And so I would say that like your goal, just like how Justin's been saying pretty much for the last hour, if you guys haven't been paying attention, he keeps saying his goal is just to make a better product. Sometimes that's gear related. Sometimes it's knowledge based. But if you can make a better product, that's what's going to allow you to charge more money. And the reason why you charge more money is because your demand becomes really high. And now you charge more money just because There's only
I
52.
can't take everybody.
Yeah, there's only 52 weekends in a year. Like he can't take every wedding, so he has to charge more in order to, sift out who actually can take them. And then you're creating a better product, which means now people are sharing it and they want to see more, and they keep passing that around. And now he's getting booked 2-3 years out in advance. And he's like, well, I don't know if I want to be doing this in 3 years. So if you want to book me 3 years, you got to pay a lot of money. You know what I mean? Because he's locking down a date that far in advance. So I would say if you're thinking about buying gear to, be able to raise your prices, don't necessarily think about the gear. Think about, how can I create a better product that I can sell as a service? And if the answer to that is gear, then yeah, you're good. But if it's not gear, most of the time it's knowledge. You can absolutely create a better product just with the knowledge alone.
We got 2 more questions.
All right, we'll speed run these questions.
But yeah, all right. So next one is, with the amount of footage, Justin, and audio you capture, how do you manage backing up and securing footage throughout a wedding day, week, or month?
That's a really good question. So I think I remember seeing like maybe it was Peter McKinnon or Maddie. It was an old Maddie video, and they were like, "We lost it all." And I remember watching that video like, that never happened to me. I think until you lose a lot of data, you won't see the value in investing in storage. That's one of those things that it hurts when you buy $5,000 worth of hard drives. It doesn't, there's no immediate, like mine is in a closet. You never even see it. But, I lost 9 terabytes in 2020 of footage. Yes. Yeah. This is another thing that I've never gone public and said this. So, but I lost so much footage at one point where I couldn't not care about storage. So I had like whatever it cost to never call another couple and say, I don't have any footage from your wedding. I was willing to take. Like at that point, I didn't care about cameras, the new lens, batteries, monitors, mics. I didn't care about none of that. It was, what do I need? RAID? Okay, how does RAID work? Okay, how do you back up? Maybe I need additional copies, right? I'm still gonna shoot raw, blah, 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 blah. So it kept growing. Now the system is with NAS units, and I see this all the time in my comments and on my videos that I've made about NAS units. And it's like, this is unrealistic. It's overkill, blah, 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 blah. But the thing about it that a lot of people don't realize is you can start with a 20 bay NAS system and put one drive in it for very inexpensive and buy drives over time. And it just continues to grow your storage pool. So for me, I've got 2 NAS servers here in the studio. One auto backs up to the other, and then that other one uploads to Dropbox. And we store all the proxies and we save it all through Dropbox. There are more expensive ways that you can go with, like Backblaze to do NAS backups, stuff like that. For me, what I do is I keep all my proxies. That way it's a little inexpensive, but if anything was to hit the fan, I could still edit a project. Obviously it's not going to be 8K. It'll be 4K. It cuts it in half, but I'll still have really good, decent resolution proxy files to do a full edit with.
I 100% agree. I have the same thing here. Got a NAS system. It sits,
and I don't even
here.
feel like that's enough sometimes,
bro. It's so funny. Like I feel like we've had like a lot of this. Like we've been living the same life, Like I have it on footage. I had to call. No, ironically, it was a wedding, and I don't shoot a lot of weddings. But the moment you have to call a bride and tell her you don't have your footage, bro, you don't care about anything else other than hard drive. You're like, I got to get my system locked in. Locked in. No, absolutely. Losing footage is that's a moment. That's a moment.
And then we didn't even talk about how expensive it was to attempt to recover the 9 terabytes. But then I realized the value in my insurance. I was like, oh, we can't never go default on insurance. I'll lose everything, but I'm never gonna not pay my insurance bill. You know what I mean? Like it was because I was just like, oh, you cover that? Wow, like it's so many things that you don't think about. And again, if you're living this freelancer mind, because I got insurance day one. I was always afraid of showing up to somebody's wedding and a light stand falling and hitting somebody and getting sued, and they take everything that I have in my personal life. I was always afraid of that. And so day one, I was like, nah, we getting insurance, general liability, let's get covered. But yeah, storage and recovery costs and all this stuff, it's just like, that's one of the things I feel like if I could go back to the very beginning, outside of getting insurance, it would have been from day one, figuring out what the best storage solution was. And if I couldn't afford it, doing what I just said, maybe buying one drive and then buying the shell and adding to it over time, instead of doing what I was doing and had like 50 T5s and, you know what I'm saying, like just no solid solution at all.
Bro, I'm with you. I thought a safety drive was the lacy ones with the orange bumper around it. I was like, oh, it's got the orange bumper. That's safe. That was my idea of safety when it came to a drive. Justin, always a pleasure having you on the show. Always fun to have you here. We've had a blast. Thank you so much for all the nuggets, giving us some of the insights, especially on like your business and just other things that you're doing. Love you. Love your wife. You guys are crushing it. You guys keep pushing the boundaries in the world of wedding films, but you guys are also pushing the bounds in just filmmaking in general. And I think whether you're a wedding filmmaker or you're someone like myself who tries to steer clear from wedding films, there's still so much that we're learning from you guys. And honestly, the fact that you're willing to put that up online for people is absolutely amazing. Where can the people find you? And if they want to go even deeper with you, what are some of the things that you guys are currently putting out there for the people?
Yeah, so I'm available. Social media, Instagram is probably the best place to reach me, is Justin Porter Media. And then, of course, we have our academy as well, the JPM Live Academy. If you want direct access to me, that's kind of what I prioritize, just because, you know, it's a lot to keep up with the emails and the comments and the DMs. It's a lot, but I still try to make my way through them. But inside the JPM Live Academy, we do weekly mentor calls. So every Wednesday we meet. We can talk about whatever you want. Sometimes it's focused. Sometimes it's just everybody saying something and we're just there as a group, as a community. But I also just want to leave it, because we're talking about business. If I could just say one last thing, Brandon, is that okay? Just
Dude,
one last
do your thing all day.
Okay. I just wanted to end it with, we were talking about earlier, I said something about freelancer versus operating as a business. And it reminded me of when I had this conversation. I used to do this. I used to do these, like, you know, fitness videos and stuff for people. And I would tell these companies, like, just because you own the gym doesn't mean you should be the person in the commercial, you know? Mm-hmm. And I feel the same way. Like, thinking about it is like, just because you own the camera doesn't mean you should own a production company. You may be better as a shooter. And I had a mentor call with someone and they were like, I hate the business stuff, man. I hate all the emails and back and forth with the clients, the negotiations. I'm like, then just shoot. It's perfectly okay to find someone who will do that and you be just a lethal shooter, somebody that's great with the camera, great with directing, stuff like that. So I just want to leave you with, if you're wondering if you want to just freelance or operate as a business, think of all the things that it takes to run a business. You know, all the day-to-day, the HR, the emailing, the back and forth, client management, all of that. If you don't want to do that, then maybe you just want to freelance and do something where you can just work for someone who's handling all that. And you show up, do the best that you can with your camera. You go home and they stress all night and every day. And, you know, like me and Brandon, where our beards are turning gray, you let us do that. And it's okay. There's nothing wrong in that. But not every videographer needs a production company. Some videographers just need to be videographers. And some videographers want to push the needle and run and manage a team. And there's a distinct difference between the two.
Dude, that's so good. That's such a great way to end it off. And I'll let it end right there. Thank you so much for coming on, dropping these nuggets. We're definitely going to clip that one too, because I think a lot of people need to hear that, because I
appreciate you, man.
It's awesome. But thank you so much. You guys have a great rest of your day. We appreciate you, brother. Love you. Thanks for coming on.